925, Big 550 KTRS. Tony Messenger here, Jane Duker, John Deal. Last night, the state of Missouri executed Herbert Smalls. Tony Messenger, lots going on with the death penalty these days in the state of Missouri.
The thing that everybody should read as it relates to the death penalty in Missouri is the federal appeals court ruling in the last case, the final appeals court ruling that came after Missouri killed the guy, because Missouri couldn't actually wait for the legal system to finish itself. And the federal judge that wrote a dissent in that case and then was later joined by another of his judges on the panel eviscerated the Missouri death penalty in terms of how poorly it's being implemented. And most of this isn't new. The American Bar Association did a report a couple of years ago that had a lot of conservatives, including Judge Stephen Limbaugh, on the panel that similarly said Missouri has massive death penalty problems, like a lot of states do, but we have very little transparency in terms of what the governor decides or not decides on clemencies. We have massive problems in terms of figuring out which drug to use, and then secrecy about where we're actually getting it and whether or not it's appropriate. I get that politically it's easy to say in this state, this very conservative state, let's kill bad guys. And I have no doubt that Alan Nicholson, that Herbert Smalls, that most of the people that this state has put to death recently are bad guys. But we're doing it in violation of our own Constitution. We're doing it we are going to such incredible effort to try to kill bad people because it's good politics. It's disgusting. Missouri needs a moratorium on the death penalty. It needs to get its house in order. I frankly am opposed to the death penalty and would love to see it go away. But I'm open to the fact that even if you're going to have it, at least do it right. And Missouri's not doing it right now. And this is a Democrat-Republican problem. This isn't a partisan problem. This is just caring enough about people's lives and the Constitution and our individual rights, even the rights of murderers, to do it right.
John Deal.
Well, I would wait. I agree on the court case, but I think one thing that for the listeners is to pay very close attention to what Tony said, is that it's a dissent in the case as to whether or not Missouri was being unconstitutional. The majority of the judges agreed that the process was constitutional.
Right, he was in fact
and
executed.
And was in fact executed. So it's the courts that determine constitutionality. The process that Missouri has followed over the past couple of executions has been exhaustively examined by the courts, and every court has found it to be constitutional and allowed the executions to occur. So there's one judge who wrote one dissent that another judge agreed with that thought it was unconstitutional. So let's get that out of the way. Number two, I do agree with you on some of the secrecy that's being done by the Nixon administration on this. We hear reports at the Capitol that there's, people in the Department of Corrections driving down to Oklahoma with cash to pick up drug protocols.
It sounds like a drug. It's a drug deal.
Right.
The Department of Corrections is taking a guy with $15,000 cash and sending him around to pay for a drug in a pharmacy that they won't name in another state.
In another state and bringing it back.
Now, they can't even buy it in a state, in a pharmacy from Missouri?
No, I don't know whether I don't know whether that's true or not true. But we have some committees in the House that are trying to investigate this and get to the bottom of it to see whether it is or is not true. And that's a problem. I agree with the lack of transparency, and that's kind of a constant theme throughout Nixon's administration, is a lack of transparency. It's a cobble of lawyers, and there's a cocoon, and you can't get information about anything. So that's pretty consistent. And I do agree with you that I think there needs to be more
Those darn lawyers.
Sunlight. I tell you, they're all over the place. Can't get rid of them. You got to shake them off. So.
I mean, as the only person who's actually sort of presided over and been involved in an execution, I think that some of the challenges are self-inflicted, but I also think that some of the challenges that the state is facing is not necessarily their fault. I mean, this is the reason for the secrecy on the drugs is because anytime a state mentions that they may use a drug for executions, you have a European drug company or someone who says, we're no longer going to ship the drug for any purpose if you use it for executions. So, you've got drug companies, really making it difficult and hijacking needed drugs for other purposes because of executions. So,
Doesn't a company have a right to say if you're going to use it
Correct.
to execute somebody, I don't want you to use it?
Yes, they do. But then, that leads to Missouri having to make the decision that, consistent with the Constitution to do it by lethal injection, that they need to do it in secret.
But that's not what's happening. It's not a company saying you can't use it. It's a company that may be based in Europe, and the European Union is putting export restrictions on the United States,
well, but
saying you
same
can't
result,
ship the
though.
drug.
Same result.
Right, but that's different. than saying
people
They're
are
government
saying a
saying.
company as opposed to a country.
A government.
Both.
government,
Well,
right.
I think both. I mean, the drug companies are all in on that. I mean, that's not the EU's not doing it because the drug companies don't want them to. I mean, they do, and so so I think that is a challenge. I mean, the idea that you don't reveal who the doctor is who takes care of this. I mean, that's public safety. I mean, this guy, I mean, that's been going on since, the beginning of executions this way. So that's nothing new.
But
The executioners used to be hooded
Right.
when they hung people.
Right, but
One, so they didn't know themselves.
But-
and two,
but
so
doctors have taken an oath that says first do no harm.
But that's the doctor's problem with the Board of Healing Arts and his profession. I mean, that's not something, So, and then with regard to clemencies, I mean, because I've probably looked at 3,000 clemency petitions in my time there, and those are completely discretionary rights that the governor or the president is given. There is no right to have transparency in that. Some have done that; they've had hearings. I think if people request from a sunshine law clemency petitions, you can get them, but it's a completely discretionary thing, and he doesn't have to give a reason. There is no sort of due process or any kind of rights involved in that, and so the fact that the process is there, and I don't think it should be public. It doesn't matter.
It's also a discretionary thing in which this governor has probably the worst record of exercising that power, that mercy of any governor in the nation. He has used it one time.
Well, and a lot wait
One
till the
time.
end of their
You
terms
mean-
too.
you mean
so
for
in fairness,
clemency?
For
yes.
clemency, pardon, any element of that where you can
Set aside a verdict.
set aside a
Right, you
verdict
can
or
commute a
let
sentence,
somebody
you can-
know
right.
not get killed or whatever. He saved one guy from being killed right before the Pope got here, and that was it.
But a lot
That
wait till
was
the
it.
end of their administration. I mean, in fairness to Governor Nixon, a lot wait till they're, in the last, months of their, last administration, and he's term limited. So
And I
That
conflated.
wasn't
I
Nixon.
conflated. I conflated
Yeah, I
there.
was gonna-
Nixon's used
Yeah.
it one time, but it wasn't. It
No,
was
that
Mel
was
Carnahan who
Carnahan
used it
who
related
did
to
it
the
on the
Pope.
Pope.
But,
Okay.
but Nixon's used it one time.
Here's the out question: are they only allowed to execute through lethal injection?
Well, right now, Missouri, because you have to put together a protocol
Right.
in order to determine legally whether it complies with the Constitution. Yeah, and the protocol's been changing a lot because of these, external
But-
circumstances.
Because we keep hearing people who want to bring back the gas chamber
Well, but
or the.
that would require, upgrading. We haven't done it in years and years and years, and so if we were going to do another method, it would take some time to gear up, put together a protocol, and do that.
And there
so,
would be a series of court and constitutional challenges to that.
that.
process.
Gotcha.
So,
this has been tested.
right,
Gotcha.
lethal injection, we know, and
So
and
this is
gas
the
chamber
fastest
has
way,
been-
and if we change it, it's going to take a while
it'll
to get
start over, right?
All right, that's Jane Duker, John Deal, Tony Messenger. When we come back, Normandy's looking for $5 million, so they hired a lobbyist for $130,000 and got yelled at for it. We'll talk about that next on KTR.